Hello, this is Professor Angelia with Works of Hearts, Child Development and Psychology class, Part 5. Last time we left off on talking about infant states, how they're mostly sleeping all the time, and then active waking and alert and activity, and drowsy and crying. It's what they do. Don't hate them for crying. Tally let you know they need something. Trends in development immunizations. Have states and the District of Columbia increased the percentages of 2-year-olds who have been fully immunized against preventable childhood diseases? These figures represent the total percentage who are completely immunized at this time. In all these areas, it went up 6%, so it got better. No change. In the 50 states, 45% had no change. Worse, 0. That's good. Got worse. And in 94, 75% of children were being vaccinated. And by the end of that decade, 78% of children were being vaccinated. I was vaccinated. My children were vaccinated. I don't believe that this leads to developmental disabilities. I think about the same age as these children are getting these things, this shows up. So personally, I think it's coincidence. I've seen science on both sides of this. So it's hard to tell, and they don't really know for sure. But my thinking on this was children die from measles and whooping cough, and people die from TB. So from my personal point of view, it was worth it to give them the immunization so that they did not end up with these diseases, which could be much worse than what the immunization could do to them. Death from infectious diseases, the effects of vaccination. Here we go. We're going to go pre-vaccine, and then to current day. Measles. Pre-vaccine. 894,134 died, and this was in the year 1941. As of the last reporting, 135. So if you compare those numbers, 894,134 people died of measles in 1941 with 135 recently. That's a big number. That tells you that vaccination is helping. Diphtheria. In 1921, the record was 206,969 people died of diphtheria. Recently, we've had 5. Now, this is just in the United States. This is not all over the world. Mumps. In 1968, evidently they had a bad outbreak then. 209,000 people died from mumps. Recently, we've had 612. Rubella. In 1969, evidently we had an outbreak. 57,686 people died. Recently, we've only had 161. Polio. In 1952, when they had a big outbreak, 21,269 people died from polio. Recently, we have had 0. Now, I heard that there was a case or two coming back, but here in the United States, 0. So this just shows, this source was from the U.S. Public Health Service. So this just shows vaccines do work. Vaccines do work. And, you know, to me, there's nothing more precious than the life of my child. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Child development. The needs of children. Parents are responsible for creating an environment which enables their children to develop physically, intellectually, and emotionally. Children are unlikely to fulfill their potential unless their needs are met. In her book, The Needs of Children, first published in 1975, Mia Kelmer Pringle identified, in addition to obvious physical needs, 4 basic needs which must be satisfied if children are to develop to their full potential. She then went on to consider the likely results in a child's life if these are not met. The quotations which follow contain some of her key ideas. For many of the children who come to court, there may be failure to meet these needs at any levels. Love and security. The need is met by the child experiencing from birth onwards a stable, continuous, dependable, and loving relationship with his parents, or permanent parent substitute, who themselves enjoy a rewarding relationship with each other. First and foremost, this need is met by giving the child the security of stable family relationships where attitudes and behavior are consistent and dependable. The security of a familiar place and the security of a known routine. And that's what a lot of people that I used to go see for the parenting skills program. There was no consistency in the home. There was no routine in the home, and the kids were just kind of doing whatever they wanted to and all around. Children need that. They're not going to like it. They're going to complain about it. But honestly, their little brains need that. You need to have dinner every day at a such and such time. You need to have homework every day, such and such time. Household chores every day, such and such time. You get your bath at this time every day. Now, you can move that down an hour on the weekends. Yeah, you don't want to have them like, super structured where they don't know what to do once they become an adult. But you need that. They need the routine. All these make for continuity and predictability in a world in which the child has to meet and come to terms with so much that is new and changing. When this need for love and security is not met adequately, then the consequences can be disastrous later on, both for the individual and for society. Anger, hate, and lack of concern for others are probably reactions to being unloved and rejected. Vandalism, violence, and delinquency are not infrequently an outward expression of these feelings. A child from a discordant home is liable himself to become emotionally disturbed or antisocial. And if you look back into any criminal records and talk to any people, a lot of people who turn to violent crime were abused themselves or neglected themselves. So, this is just a fact of life. It is. New experiences. New experiences are a prerequisite for mental growth and are essential to the mind's development as food is for the body. The urban environment is hostile to the young. There is little freedom or safety to explore or experiment, particularly without adult supervision. In seeking, legitimately, for the excitement of new experiences, the forbidden, risky or dangerous, are liable to acquire an aura of daring and excitement. We in urban areas, some people want to call it the ghetto, but it's not always that. Come on, folks. There's a lot of downtown that's not the ghetto. When you're so close to that, stuff can happen. There's too many people, too much is going on. I'm not going to name names. You all know what I'm talking about. But the poor little boy, poor little Hispanic boy, he got kidnapped and murdered by a man. He was just out wandering around looking for, fun, something to do. And the parents weren't there and they lost their son. And that's a terrible, horrible tragedy. But the facts are, where you have more people concentrated, the percentage of violent offenders is going to go up. That's just, a fact of life. Whereas if you have, a handful of people, it's less likely. Whereas you have, blocks and blocks full of people, it's more likely. What may start out as a lark, giving vent to high spirits and the desire for adventure, and all, preteen and teenage kids feel that. They feel like they're becoming adult, they want to go out and have adventure and have life. Can then all too easily turn into vandalism and mindless destruction, because they got nothing else to do, and, this is thrill-seeking behavior, and they have a little fun, but they don't realize, it's destructive and a bad thing, and they can go to jail for it. That's why they need some guidance. Some adolescent escapades, which result in crime, are child's play conducted with adult means. And that's the fact. This is child's play conducted with adult means, because they're, in between that, and they still need guidance. So you people think, oh, my kid's, 10, my kid's 15, my kid's 18, they're grown. No, they still need guidance, and they're going to come back and ask you for guidance. You need to be the safe base that they can come back to any time in their life and ask questions and learn things from. That's your job. If you're a parent. Praise and recognition. Because growing from a helpless baby into a self-reliant adult requires an enormous amount of emotional, social, and intellectual learning, a strong incentive is needed. This is provided by the pleasure shown at success and by the praise given to achievement by adults who love the child. If you're never praising your kid, they don't know they're any good. How are they going to know if you don't tell them? Because the world's not really going to do that for them. They may get some people who will do that for them, but in general, no, they need that parent instilling that self-esteem that, you did great, that was a great job, I'm so proud. They need that. And whom he in turn loves and wants to please. Because, once they get a little praise, then they want more. That's back to that honey and vinegar thing. If this need is inadequately met or remains unsatisfied, then, in the long term, the effects are destructive of self-respect and of confidence in tackling new situations, tasks, or relationships. Now, I'm sure we've all met people who have no self-respect or respect for other people. Excuse me. And that probably goes back to their upbringing. And tackling new situations. If your child is not well adjusted, as a child, how are they going to be well adjusted as an adult? And again, tasks and relationships, the first relationships you have in life are going to affect all the later ones you have down the road. Responsibility. How can responsibility be given to the immature and to the irresponsible? There is no way out of the dilemma that unless it is granted, the child cannot learn how to exercise it. Like every other skill, it needs to be practiced under adult guidance. That's one of the problems in this neighborhood. We have adults just letting their kids out the door, sun up to sundown. And then these kids are, breaking windows, taillights, doing things, whereas if they had some adult guidance, these things wouldn't happen. My children never did any of those things because until they were 10 years old, they were in the backyard under adult supervision. I would sit out in my chair while they were playing on the swing or playing ball or whatever. I'd play ball with them. I taught them how to play sports. Mom. And then as they got older, they could have a little more freedom. When they were, in middle school, they could walk around the block. And they got in high school, they could go to other parts of, the other neighborhoods within walking distance. You got to keep an eye on your kids. You got to teach them. You got to teach them how to be people. Which then gradually diminishes during adolescence and adulthood. You got to let them go Little by little, you got to give them freedom. But if you give them all their freedom all at once, and they're just running the world between sun up and sun down, you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're doing. They could be doing anything. You can think, oh, my kids wouldn't do that, but you're wrong because you didn't teach them what they should and shouldn't be doing. The fact that during adolescence, many youngsters rebel against parental standards and seek to find their own way of solving problems in no way changes the need for parents to make clear what they regard as desirable or acceptable standards. And, my kids knew that. My youngest one recently joked that he didn't have any rebellious teens, so now he decided he's going to have those now because he didn't do that when he was a teenager. So I guess he's around some of these other people that, did some stuff, and then he's like, hey, I never did any bad stuff. Maybe I need to do that now. But I was like, no, you don't have to do that. And he won't. He's a good kid. The child who is denied opportunities to exercise responsibility will fail to develop a sense of responsibility for himself or herself. I recently had a dealings with someone like that. They didn't feel like they had to take any responsibility for anything. They were just existing. And it's like, really? For others, or for material objects. And I'm sure we all know people who are destructive. They don't respect their stuff, anybody else's stuff. And that's because they were never taught that stuff is valuable. Stuff costs money. And you break my stuff, you have to buy me new stuff. You break your brother's stuff, you have to buy him new stuff. So if you don't want to spend your birthday or Christmas money buying a replacement, whatever it was, then you respect people's stuff. And if you don't respect your stuff and treat it like crap, then nobody's going to want to buy you more stuff because they see you're treating your stuff like crap. It's all about teaching your kids. You got to teach them everything. It's a hard job. It's a constant job. But, the more you put into them, the more you're going to get out of them. It's just the way it is with anything in life. Adolescence. This is seen as the period of transition from childhood to adulthood, and teenagers continually remind parents that they are no longer children. If you ever had teenagers, that's true. Adolescence is accompanied by physical, intellectual, and psychological maturation. And it is time when a young person will gain the skills necessary for becoming a successful adult. So if you don't give your kids any responsibility and you don't give them rules, you're not teaching them to be an adult. Because at some point, and it seems like to me, the ones who say you're out the door and you're 18 are the ones who aren't teaching their children, how to be a responsible adult. They're controlling the situation, or they're just, totally permissive. And then this poor kid leaves the home and is like, what next? I have no idea what to do. Yeah, it's scary. Adolescents are moody. Oh, yeah. Some of them are pretty moody. They can alternate between being unreliable and being dependable and responsible. As they begin to separate psychologically from the family, and that's just going to happen. It's not that they don't care about you anymore. They're growing up and they want their own life. They are likely to oppose family rules, values, and expectations. That's just testing the boundaries. That's what everything and everyone does, testing the boundaries. When you're an adolescent, that's what it is. Where can I get away with what I can get away with? Where are the boundaries? I want to know these things. There are often turbulent years, and every kid is different. Like I said, my youngest one, breezy peasy. My older one, some difficulties there. My middle one, he went through a rough patch where I was like, So they're all different. Some of them are easy, some of them are harder. But you got to be there and you got to teach them. Adolescents experience emotions in a particularly intense manner because their bodies are being flooded with hormones. Most abused and neglected young people come from families where adults have had problems coping with their own emotional states. So, if the adult is an emotional wreck, they can't cope with this child who's got all these hormones rushing through their body, who's becoming an emotional wreck. It's too much for them. And I've seen families like that too, where I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. Well, then why did you become a parent? To get your stuff straight, and then you deal with their stuff. There's counselors or psychologists. There's places you can go for help. Take advantage of it. Interpersonal conflicts are inevitable, and one of the most needed skills of parents and teenagers is conflict resolution. Some of the physical and emotional changes that mark this stage in life usually start during the preteen years. Particularly for girls, on the whole, physically mature 2 years ahead of boys. In early adolescence, until about 15 and a half, the focus is on becoming comfortable with body changes, psychological separations, and gaining self-control. During later adolescence, preparing for independence while remaining emotionally connected to the family takes precedence. The adolescent is trying to work out questions about him or herself. Who am I? Where do I belong? What can I do? What do I believe in? As very young children feel the world should revolve around them, so do adolescents. Again, with that, the hormones pumping them up, and it's very personal, very all about me. And that's just a fact, Seeing their own needs as paramount and other family members' needs as secondary to their own. And that's just not them being jerks. This is how adolescence is. You should have some compassion for them. They're going through being changed from a little kid to an adult, and it happens in these, 10-year spurt here. And that's a lot of growing and changing, and, just be compassionate. You had to go through it too. You know what it's like. It's not easy. Gradually, adolescents shift their dependency needs from family to their adolescent friends. By the time they have become adults, young people need to have learned how to take care of themselves physically and psychologically. We recently had a person staying with us who was definitely physically and psychologically immature. They did not want to have any type of transportation. They wouldn't depend on everybody else. They didn't want to make any money, and they were just really immature. And I tried to help them, and I had other people try to help them, but they were just unwilling to get some help. Now I hear that has changed, and I know that they do have a job now. So hopefully they're growing up a little bit. But I think, they were a little behind their peers where they should have been at that age. So hopefully, she'll get her stuff straight and she'll be okay. They should have developed the necessary social skills to interact with others in an acceptable way. And I know we've all seen, teenagers that act like complete asses, to put it as bluntly as I can. And that's just because they were never taught how to, communicate like a decent person. Usual development. Usual development in children aged 5 to 9 allows for curiosity and eagerness for information, enjoyment of physical activities, use of imaginary and dramatic play as a way of finding out about the world, increasing self-reliance, development of reasoning skills moving from magical to concrete, thinking, ability to discern a sense of order in the workings of the world, a sense of time and space, development of a conscience, the sorting out of right and wrong. They need praise for learning new tasks and developing new skills. Boundaries, guidance and space to make mistakes and to learn from them. They need a sense of belonging and of knowing where they fit in the family. That's why the search in, especially the middle school years, to fit in somewhere, but it's good to encourage them to be themselves. Don't fake who you are so you can fit in with this or that group. Be yourself. That's something my grandma was very good at, was telling me to be yourself. If you like this, you like that. You don't have to be like these other girls. If they're picking on you, that makes them mean. Be who you are. You got to be happy with who you are. Usual development in children aged 10 to 14 allows for onset of puberty and a number of important physical changes, a need to begin to assert independence from primary caregivers, to make important relationships outside primary caregivers, coming to terms with strong emotional feelings, including sexual feelings, a questioning of adult values and changing views about the world, a changing view of self, experimenting with different forms of identity, a challenge and manipulation of rules. So this is just going to happen when they're, during this age. Just like I said, you might want to just roll your eyes and give up, but don't. Have compassion on them. You went through this too. Think back to when you were this age, and just do what you need to do for them. Some of the things they need include boundaries and limits with rationale, because they're going to want to know why. Why? So you have to be explained in them why. And, because I said so isn't an answer, because they don't respect that. They feel like that's you just being a jerk. You need to give them the real reason why you think this is a needed thing. And then they can see your reasoning and think, well, okay. Or they might not even listen, but you still need to just let them know. And that shows that you care about them. They know that you care and you're not just trying to control them, Time to discuss how they feel, I'd be working and, one of my sons might come in, Mom, be like, yeah. And, even though I might be sitting at the computer trying to get a workshop out or whatever, I got to stop and listen to them, and talk to them, because that way they know I cared. I listened. I was there for them, that they come first. What they think, because sometimes kids got some funny ideas about some stuff, and you kind of have to guide them in a different direction. Their dreams, fears, and aspirations. Assistance with skills for independence, reassurance, consistency, bolstering of positive identity. Because that's what you want them to have. If I hear some of these parents are so critical of their kids and the kid has like this much self-esteem, they're like, well, I don't know why he doesn't do better. I do. I could tell you if you'd ask me. Usual development in children age 15 to 17 allows for continued development as outlined above, but in addition, less reliance on primary caregivers, greater financial independence, consolidation of identity, more focus on friends. And I was just honest with my kids. When they got to be 16, I said, if you want a car or a motorcycle, a moped, whatever you want, you need to get a job so you can afford to have that, because I can't afford to give that to you. If you want it, you need to get a job. And one of my children, he did not have a job until he was probably 20 years old. And my middle child, he got a job, didn't like it, kind of quit that. He didn't get a job till after college. He went to college for a year. But now my youngest one listened, and he had a job when he was in high school. And so he had money to run around with his friends and do things. And he did get a car, but, that didn't work out. But he got another vehicle. And that one also didn't work out. But then he got another one, which so far is working okay. But he had money to do things. So he understood that, mom and dad can't afford to give me everything I want. So I need to get out and be financially responsible for myself if I want to have, this kind of life. So, like I said, they're all different, but they do need to have financial responsibility. They do need to learn that they're financially responsible for their life. More focus on friends. Of course, parents hate that the friends are becoming more important than the parents, but that's a facts of life, parents. Facts of life. Young people continue to need support and reassurance from primary caregivers, often needing to know that there's a place for them in the home, even if they have moved out. That's what I tell my kids. You're always welcome. This is your home too. A lot of people aren't like, no, don't let your kids come back. They're out. Once they get out, don't let them come back. They need to be self-reliant. Well, stuff happens though. People get laid off. People lose jobs. Disastrous financial situations happen. That, if you love your child, they have to know they have a place in the family, which means sometimes a place in the home. Moral development. All societies have developed rules about right and wrong. Many of the rules have been made into laws, which all people should obey. All people. A conscience is a set of moral principles that we each develop. But just because we have a conscience, we don't always live by it. Especially if the rewards for not doing so are great. Or the risk of being caught is slim. And those people are called criminals, and there's lots of them out there. And that's where we're going to stop for today. I hope you found this educational or informational or just entertaining. And I will leave the link in the comments where you can donate to help me continue to bring you these classes, because I want to get all of this information out to the public before I can no longer do that. I hope you got something out of this. And until next time.